Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Mr. Budehas, your online math teacher. In today's video, you will learn midpoint and the perpendicular bisector. Let's start with the midpoint. Midpoint is the point found halfway or in the middle of a segment. It divides the segment into two equal parts. Suppose we have a line segment here and the endpoints are x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. The point that divides the segment into two equal parts is what we called the midpoint. And the coordinates are x sub m, or the x component of the midpoint, and the y component of the midpoint. To determine the midpoint of a line segment with endpoints x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2, we use the following formula. We have m is equal to x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2. This is to find the x component of the midpoint. And for the y component of the midpoint, just add the two y's and then divide it by 2. For example, determine the midpoint of the segment with endpoints 1, 2, and negative 2, 5. So our 1 here is our x sub 1 and 2 is y sub 1. Negative 2 is our x sub 2. 5 is y sub 2. Now, to use the formula, we need to have x sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 1, and y sub 2. Then, for the x component of the midpoint, just add all the x or the 2x. We have x sub 1 is 1 and x sub 2 is negative 2. Then divide it by 2. Next, for the y component, just add the two y's. Y sub 1 is 2 and y sub 2 is 5. So you have 2 plus 5 divided by 2. Then simplify. 1 plus negative 2, that is negative 1. So you have, for the x component is negative 1 half. For the y component, 2 plus 5 is 7. Divided by 2, you have 7 over 2. Therefore, the midpoint is negative 1 half 7 over 2. Next, we have the perpendicular bisector. It is the line intersecting a segment through its midpoint at a right angle. To determine the slope of the perpendicular bisector of a line segment with slope m, we use the following formula. For the slope of a perpendicular bisector, we use this symbol. And for the slope of a line or slope of a line segment, we used m. Now, to find the slope of a perpendicular bisector, we have this formula. Slope of a perpendicular bisector is equal to negative 1 over m. And that m is the slope of a line segment. To find the slope of a line segment, we have m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And this is otherwise known as the rise over run. Now, to determine the equation of a perpendicular bisector, we are going to use the point slope form, which is y minus y component of the midpoint is equal to the slope times x minus the x component of the midpoint. So most of the problems here under perpendicular bisector is you are going to determine the equation of this perpendicular bisector. And for example, determine the equation of the perpendicular bisector of line segment AB, where A has the coordinates negative 2, 4, and B has the coordinates 6, negative 2. Okay, here's the solution. First thing to do is we are going to determine the midpoint of line segment AB. Our endpoints are, for x sub 1 is negative 2, y sub 1 is 4. For the second point or second endpoint is x sub 2 is 6 and y sub 2 is negative 2. Now, we have to determine the midpoint. Of course, we have to use the midpoint formula. For the x component of the midpoint, you have to add the x sub 1 and x sub 2. Negative 2 plus 6, then divide it by 2. For the y component, add the y sub 1 and y sub 2. We have 4 plus negative 2, then divide it by 2. Negative 2 plus 6 is positive 4 over 2, and that is 2. Now for 4 plus negative 2, that is positive 2 over 2. So we have 1. So the midpoint of the line segment AB is at 2, 1. Second step is we are going to determine the slope of a perpendicular bisector. Using x sub 1 is negative 2, x sub 2 is 6, y sub 1 is 4, and y sub 2 is negative 2. This is coming from the given. Before we can find the slope of a perpendicular bisector, we have to find first the slope of the line segment. We have to use this formula. M is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Then substituting all these values, we have negative 2 minus 4 divided by 6 minus negative 2. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. 6 minus negative 2 is positive 8 because it will change the operation. Negative times negative is positive. So we have negative 6 over 8. Now, reduce that one to the lowest term. We have negative 3/4. After we get the slope of a line segment, we are now going to identify the slope of a perpendicular bisector. Here's the formula for the perpendicular bisector. Then we are going to substitute the value of the slope of a line segment, which is negative 3/4. Then simplify. The numerator is negative 1. Then get the reciprocal of the denominator, which is we have negative 4/3. Then proceed to multiplication. Again, this is from division. Then you are going to proceed to multiplication by getting the reciprocal of the denominator. So negative 1 times negative 4/3, that is positive 4/3. And that is the slope of a perpendicular bisector. Now, since we already have the midpoint and the slope of a perpendicular bisector, we are now going to find the equation of the perpendicular bisector using the point slope form. Here's the formula. The M there is the slope of a perpendicular bisector. So of course, in equation, there must be y and x. So all you have to do is to substitute the value for y component of the midpoint, the slope of a perpendicular bisector, and the x component of the midpoint. So we have, take note that the midpoint is at 2, 1. So we have our midpoint is 1. Then the x component of the midpoint is 2. And the slope is 4/3. Then simplify, we have 3y minus 3 is equal to 4x minus 8. What we did here is we are going to multiply both sides by positive 3 so that we can get rid of this fraction here. Okay, multiplying both sides by 3, so we have 3y minus 3 is equal to 4x minus 8. And then separating the variable terms and the constant term, so we have here 4x, then transpose this 3y to the other side, it becomes negative 3y, so you have minus 3y. And for the other side, the remaining is negative 3. Transpose this negative 8 to the other side, it becomes positive 8. And 8 minus 3 is 5. So we have 5 here. And 4x minus 3y is just, we cannot um, simplify that one. So we have 4x minus 3y is equal to 5. Therefore, the equation of the perpendicular bisector is 4x minus 3y is equal to 5. Okay, now I'm done with my discussion for today. I hope you learned something from the midpoint and the perpendicular bisector. Now it's your turn. I want you to answer this individual practice, the two problems in here. And please comment down your answers so that I can check if your answers are correct. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching.